My grandfather saved his entire life. Not because a financial advisor told him to, not because he read it in a book, because he believed in it the way people believe in things that feel unquestionable, like the sun coming up, like hard work being rewarded, like a number that keeps climbing, meaning you are getting ahead. Every week, a portion of his paycheck went into a savings account he barely touched. He called it being responsible. He called it building something. And in a way, he was right. He was doing everything he was supposed to do, everything the bank told him to do, everything his own father had done before him. By the time I understood money well enough to ask questions, that account had a number in it that looked solid. And he was proud of that number. Genuinely, quietly proud. But here's what nobody ever told him. And here is what nobody is telling you right now. The number going up is not the same as your money growing. Walk into any grocery store. Nothing dramatic, just the one you go to every week without thinking about it. In 2019, a regular grocery run for a family of 4 in the United States averaged around $150 a week. By 2023, that same shop, same items, same brands, same quantities, was running closer to $210 or $220. In the United Kingdom, a weekly family shop that cost £75 in 2019 was costing over £110 by late 2022. The food did not change. The portions did not shrink, at least not visibly. The cost just rose, week by week, quietly, while most people were watching their savings balance and feeling secure. Now, here is where it starts to feel wrong. Between 2021 and 2023, the average traditional savings account in the United States was paying somewhere between 0.06 and 0.5% annual interest. The big banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, were offering rates so low they were essentially decorative. Meanwhile, inflation in the United States hit 7% in 2021, climbed to 8.5% in March 2022, and peaked at 9.1% in June 2022, the highest inflation rate recorded in America in over 40 years. Do that subtraction, 0.5% interest, 9% inflation. That is a real return of negative 8.5% every single year. If you had $20,000 in a traditional savings account in January 2021, here is what actually happened to it. The bank showed you growth. Your balance crept upward. By the end of 2023, you might have had $20,300, maybe $20,400. And you might have looked at that and nodded the way my grandfather nodded. Stable, safe, ahead. But what that $20,000 could buy in 2021, the groceries, the gas, the insurance, the rent, would cost you closer to $26,000 to replicate by the end of 2023. Your account says $20,400. The real world charges $26,000. That gap, that $5,600 gap, did not appear because you made a mistake. It appeared because you trusted a system that was never built to protect you from this specific problem. You did not lose money. The bank did not steal from you. The number went up. But in real life, in purchasing power, in what your existence actually costs, you went backward, without a single warning, without a single alert from the bank that was holding your money. Now, here's the part that needs to land properly. This is not new. Go back to 1965 in America. Working families putting everything they had into savings accounts, trusting the process, watching their balances grow year after year, feeling responsible, feeling like they were building something real. Inflation crept through the late 1960s. Then it accelerated. By 1974, it hit 11%. By 1979, it was running at 13%. By 1980, it touched 14.5%, the highest in modern American history. Bank savings rates were sitting at 5 to 6%. The same math, the same gap, the same invisible erosion happening to an entire generation of people who had done nothing wrong and were losing ground every single year. There were economists who wrote about it. There were articles in major newspapers trying to explain it in plain language. A few voices on radio programs tried to warn ordinary people what was happening to their savings in real terms. But the feeling of the number going up was more powerful than the understanding of what that number actually meant. The comfort of visible growth was easier to hold on to than the discomfort of running the real calculation. And so people stayed, most of them, because the bank felt safe, because the alternative felt uncertain, because doing nothing is always the easiest thing to do when the problem is invisible. That was 1980. Here we are again. Let me tell you about someone who does not need a name because you probably know someone exactly like them. She is 34, lives in Manchester, works in marketing, makes decent money, saves £400 every month without fail, has been doing it for 4 years. Her account shows just over £19,000. She checks it sometimes and feels good about it. She should feel good. She is disciplined. She is consistent. She is doing what responsible people are told to do. But between 2020 and 2023, the United Kingdom experienced some of the sharpest inflation in its modern history. It peaked at 11.1% in October 2022. The Bank of England's base rate spent most of 2020 and 2021 sitting at 0.1%. Standard savings accounts were offering rates that barely registered. By the time rates improved, the damage was already years deep. Over 4 years of saving, her real return, after adjusting for what her money can actually purchase, is significantly below what the account balance suggests. The £19,000 she sees on screen does not represent £19,000 of 2020 purchasing power, and it represents considerably less. Estimates vary by specific year and account type, but across that period, savers in the UK lost somewhere between 15 and 25% of their real purchasing power while their nominal balances went up. She is not making a bad decision. She is making the decision every bank, every parent, every financial article aimed at young people told her to make. She is playing the game as taught, and the game is quietly costing her. So why does nobody talk about this clearly? Why does no bank ever hand you a document that says, here is your interest rate, here is the current inflation rate, here is what you actually earned in real terms this year? Why does every savings advertisement show a young couple smiling, a number rising, a sense of achievement, but never the second number? Well, the one that tells you what those savings will realistically buy in a decade? Because the model depends on your confidence. A saver who feels secure does not ask uncomfortable questions. A saver who understands real returns starts looking for alternatives. A saver who runs the actual math becomes a customer who needs to be retained rather than simply held. This is not a conspiracy. There is no group of people sitting in a room deciding to deceive you. It is just that the incentives of the institution and the interests of the customer are not the same thing. And the institution designed the communication. So the communication reflects the institution's interests. Your money is protected from bank failure. In the United States, the FDIC insures deposits up to $250,000. In the United Kingdom, the FSCS covers up to £85,000. That protection is real and it matters. What you are not protected from, what no insurance scheme covers, what no advertisement mentions, is the cost of your life rising faster than your account can follow. That risk lands entirely on you, and most people are carrying it without knowing it has a name. So here is where money actually moves when people understand the real situation. Not speculation, not schemes, just where it goes when the math is clear. The first place is real assets. Gold has been a store of value across centuries not because it is glamorous, but because it is finite. In January 2015, gold was trading at around $1,200 per ounce in the United States. By early 2024, it was trading above $2,000 per ounce. That is roughly a 67% nominal increase over 9 years. United States cumulative inflation over the same period ran at approximately 35 to 40%. Gold did not make anyone rich, but it kept pace with and exceeded the destruction that inflation caused to cash savings. That distinction is everything. The second place is equity, ownership stakes in productive businesses. The S&P 500, which tracks 500 of the largest American companies, has returned an average of approximately 10% per year over the last century when dividends are included. Over any given decade, there are down years. There is volatility. There are moments that feel catastrophic. But over 10 years, ownership in businesses that produce real goods and real services has historically beaten inflation by a meaningful margin. Sitting in a savings account has not. The data on this is not even close. The third place is property. Median home values in the United States increased by approximately 40% between 2020 and 2023 alone. In many parts of the United Kingdom, property values have more than doubled over the last 15 years. This does not mean property is always the right answer, or that it is accessible to everyone at every stage of life. It means that real physical assets have historically held their value against inflation in ways that numbers in a savings account have not. The fourth place is harder to quantify. It is capability, skills, the ability to generate income rather than simply preserve it. A professional skill that earns you $1,000 more or pounds per month every month for the next 20 years has a financial value that dwarfs what any savings account could offer. This is where most people do not think to look because it does not feel like a financial move, but in real terms, it might be the highest returning decision available to someone at 25 or 30 or even 40. Now, let me be direct about where people get this wrong when they first understand what has been happening to their money. The most common mistake is overreacting, emptying the savings account, moving everything at once into something unfamiliar because they just discovered that what they had was broken. This is how people get hurt in ways that make the original problem look small. You still need liquid cash. 3 to 6 months of living expenses sitting somewhere accessible, somewhere you can reach without selling anything or waiting for a market to cooperate. That function of a savings account is correct and necessary. The error is keeping everything there decade after decade and calling that a financial strategy. The second mistake is treating high return promises as savings account alternatives. They are not. A 30 or 40% annual return offer is not a better version of a savings account. It is an entirely different game with entirely different rules and entirely different risks. The problem with savings accounts is not that they are safe. The problem is that their safety is incomplete. Running towards something you do not understand because you just ran away from something familiar is not a strategy. It is anxiety in motion. The third mistake is waiting. Waiting until you have more to work with. Waiting until you understand this better. Waiting until the economy feels more stable or the moment feels more right. The cost of waiting is not zero. On every year that money sits in a low yield account while inflation runs above it is a year of purchasing power that does not come back. The loss is permanent and it accumulates. Waiting feels neutral. It is not. My grandfather is gone now. His account passed to my grandmother when he died. The number was still there, still going up in the way numbers in savings accounts always go up. She was proud of it in the way he had been proud of it. It represented a life of discipline, of showing up, of putting something away every week for 40 years when it would have been easier not to. And I never told her the other number, the real one, the one you get when you adjust for what things cost in 1975 versus what they cost when she finally needed to live off those savings. I never sat with her and ran that calculation because there are some truths that arrive too late to be useful and serve only to take something away from someone who has nothing to gain from the information. But you are not her, and you are not him. You are reading this at a moment when the information is still useful, when the gap between the two numbers is still closable, when the decision to look at both numbers simultaneously is still a decision that changes something. Most people who watch this will do nothing with it. Not because they do not understand, not because they do not care, because the savings account still feels safe, because the number is still going up, because changing something that looks like it is working requires more energy than most people have left at the end of a week. That is the most dangerous part of all of this. It never arrives as a crisis. There is no morning where you wake up and the account is suddenly empty and you know something catastrophic happened. It happens in the space between two numbers that most people never put in the same room at the same time. The number on the screen and the number the real world charges for your actual life. And the gap between them only becomes real when you decide to look. You now know both numbers exist. What you do with that is yours.